Hi, I'm Martin Jarvis, and once again I want to welcome you to another perspective. Today we're going to get pretty deep and possibly controversial, but it really shouldn't be. We're going to talk about spiritual things, we're going to talk about science. And it's my belief that science and spirituality seem to be polar opposites. Spiritual folks reject science. Scientists reject spirituality just based on facts. And the spiritual folks embrace belief. But what I want to suggest today is that spirituality and science are just labels of the same thing. And I believe we're going to find some clarity from a scientific perspective and from a spiritual perspective. Not clarity in what they've been investigating or what they believe they've been observing, but sort of a clarity in the similarity between the two. And I might even go so far as to say the sameness of the two. And I think we can get some order out of this chaos, out of this chasm that sort of separated the two. You know, I'm a Christian minister who was an atheist, had an epiphany one day, realized that there was an entity greater than me. And the Christian part was that I was raised in the Christian religion, so when I had this epiphany, I just simply resorted back to that which was familiar to me, which I identified the intelligence as God. Okay, that's the way I was raised. But I've been in this thing for a while. I was 28 then. I'll be 67 this year, next month, 2025, November. So I've been in this a while. I've functioned in the church. I've functioned in outreach ministries into the neighborhoods. I functioned as a mentor to juveniles for 17 years in the juvenile justice system. I've done hospital visits. I've done marriages and funerals. I've been a deacon in the church, an elder in the church, a pastor in the church for 20 years. So I've been deeply involved and really studied, okay? But as well, you know, I've always loved science, even from junior high school. And more recently, say within the last 7 or 8 years, I've been a fan of quantum physics, of quantum mechanics, the theoretical side of it. Not that I'm all that bright, but it's just amazing. The way I got introduced into that was a gentleman named Feynman. You know, of course, he's passed away, but he was like an early physicist. And when I say early, I mean in the 50s, you know, in the 60s and all. And I went from there to studying at MIT. Now, wait a minute. Not really studying at MIT, but I found that MIT had been posting its classes, the lectures, you know, the actual classroom lectures on YouTube, you know, for free. So there's no credit for it, but you can just listen, sit in the entire class. And I did that for a couple of years and then went on to begin to study other things and other physicists and theories and all this stuff, and I just found it intriguing. And so then we had maybe a couple years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago almost, we had an exchange student stay with us for a year from Spain. And she was a physics major. She went on to get a $120,000 grant, a scholarship to a college in Massachusetts, and she became an American citizen while she was with us. And so she and I had discussions. Now, she was like a math whiz. I am not. You know, I do have an MBA, so I've done all the math and the algebra, the accounting, the economics, and all that stuff, statistics and probabilities and all that stuff, which I struggled through to survive. But this girl was like a whiz. But the theoretical side of quantum physics, we had long conversations because it was something that we both really embraced, okay? So that's who I am. So I'm a Christian minister spiritually minded, but I see the stuff, in quantum physics that's amazing. The entanglement theory, the uncertainty principle, space-time, relationship, gravity, and all this cool stuff. And the whole multiverse thing is kind of problematic to me because the concept isn't really like on Star Trek, but the dimensions could be a fraction of an inch. That could be a particular multiverse. But anyway, I want to talk about this because I believe that but the religions and then the scientists are really looking at the same things. They're just seeing them differently. Okay, and so although I am a minister in the Christian religion, I don't really take religions as being that serious, as being that real. Now if I speak to a congregation, I'll be using the stories and correlating them to their lives and seeing what kind of lessons that we can get out of them. But simply differentiating between the religions as one being correct and the others being wrong, that's not me, okay? I believe that whatever the intelligence is, which we call God, I believe there is a source of our existence, okay? And because of being the creation of, we would call that intelligence God, okay? And encapsulating all that we attribute to what would be God, okay? And that's where the religions came about. But what I see then is that there is an intelligence that far supersedes us, that is the genesis of our existence, and which is why I can't really accept the atheistic view. I can accept the atheistic view as it maybe pertains to religion, but I can't accept the atheistic view as it would pertain to our existence, okay? Because there's too much. Even understanding probabilities and all that stuff, there's too much similarity. When you look at the symmetry of things that are created, and when you, like a leaf or a snowflake and all this kind of stuff, but then when you look at us as human beings versus all of the other creatures on the planet, and the similarity with the lungs and the gallbladder and the, and all the heart and all the internal organs in pretty much the same places contained within this, how would each creature it's just too coincidental. It can't be a coincidence to me, okay? Now see, so I see that something far greater intelligence than we are could have initiated this, that we see as life, as existence, as everything, okay? And I could even take, particular, religious scriptures and see where they might even reflect this as well, okay? But what I want to suggest is that everything that we experience in life, about life, that is life, is spiritual. And I'm using this term simply because it's a term that we have. And I want to suggest then that when we look at the quantum physics and the physics and all the stuff that we have discovered all along the way and trying to understand this and trying to understand that, it's all spiritual too, okay? And so I'm using the term spirit because as we are human beings, we are animated human beings, and that animated part of us might be considered spirit, the invisible part of us. And so what I want to further suggest is that the invisible everything that we experience, or that we are experiencing, that we are cognizant of or not cognizant of, all of those invisible realities are spiritual. So when we understand the concept, say a biblical concept of you reap what you sow, what goes around comes around, karma, however you want to place that, it's invisible. So how do we know then that you reap what you sow? How do we know that what goes around comes around, or there is this thing called karma? From experience, from age-old experience, from pretty much every culture on this planet, we have all come to the conclusion that what you do comes back to you. Good people reap good. Bad people reap bad. Good actions reap good. Bad actions reap bad. We embrace this from culture to culture, from nation to nation throughout history. We've received that. That's why we've come up with laws. That's why we've come up with laws to ensure that we don't do things that are not good, okay? Because there is a cause and an effect. And we recognize, although it's invisible. And then we look at something called gravity, thanks to Isaac Newton, and thanks to the expounding upon by Einstein in his space-time gravity thing. But you can't see gravity either. It's invisible. It's just as visible as what goes around comes around. But the scientists have embraced it, okay? And the scientists have recognized that this is a thing. And they've even figured out, from whatever it was that initiated with Isaac Newton, but then to Einstein with his space-time effect, and gravity and all this stuff, is that based on observation. You can't see gravity, but you can see the result of gravity. You can't see what goes around comes around, but you can see the result of, what's going around and coming around, okay? So what I'm suggesting is basically everything in life is spiritual in a sense as it pertains to human beings. Okay? And I think that the disservice that we have done, but unintentionally, is to correlate spirituality with religion. Okay? And therefore we've alienated what the scientists would be observing. And so it's not by them called spirituality, it's simply an observation and a scientific reality to them, okay? And I think so both sides are missing the spiritual nature of everything in life. And so it's my desire then we have to begin to differentiate ourselves from the religion, okay? Because the religions are the things that we have created. The religions are the things that we have created to try to understand, to try to comprehend, this God, this ancient way of trying to understand what God wants of us, what Allah wants of us, what Yahweh, Krishna, whatever we want to call this intellect, what it wants of us, the expectations and how we're supposed to live. And it's really not about all that. It's about a reality of what we are existing in, and the effects of those invisible things, what they have on our lives. It's my belief then that all the things that are happening to us in life are happening because of what we do or what we don't do. And that's what the scripture will tell us that, right? That's why we're supposed to conduct ourselves in certain ways. What I'm suggesting is this is not a religious reality. It is simply a life reality. And these laws that have effect upon us, like the what goes around comes around, are no different or no less real in our lives than gravity. Okay? We have just studied gravity in such a way that because we don't really understand why gravity works or how it works, we have just understood that it does, and this is the effect that it has, okay? And so if we put that much time into trying to comprehend even the simple concept of what goes around comes around, we'd recognize we can't figure out why that is. We can just determine that it is, okay? And this is everything in life. And so what I'm trying to do then is to get the scientists and the religious people to open up and to recognize that we have grasped a hold of some truths, but we've also garnered with these truths the fallacy that has been attached to these truths. One that everything is about God and the religion. And the other is that there is no God. There is no intelligence, okay? And I think there's just a communication difference here. And as far as the religion is concerned, we've just bought into some age-old beliefs that aren't really real, that aren't really effective in our lives. I mean, come on now, when you look historically throughout the world and the religions, you see a lot of chaos, you see a lot of violence, you see a lot of stuff going on as a result of the religion that is detrimental to humanity and life, okay? And so I don't want to totally discount like the prophets, you know, and I don't want to discount some of the writings in the holy books. I do want to discount the religions though. But I want to say many of the religious texts that have been compiled across the board, across religions, have within them certain truths that are trying to speak to us. They're not validating the religions which we have created for our own maybe positive reasons initially, but turning out to be exploitive, power-grabbing, and manipulating. But to recognize that human beings that have contemplated, that have thought things, have come up with ideas. That was the deal with Einstein. I mean, he was a guy that would just daydream. He would just think about things, consider things, and come up with these theories and then begin to work. He wasn't even a math guy. Well, when it came to certain things that Einstein needed to compute, he would get math guys, you know, to try to validate his theories. Like Isaac Newton had this whole gravity theory going on, how effective gravity was on certain things, certain planets, all this stuff. It just measured up when it came to the planets. But the one planet Isaac Newton's theory didn't measure up to was the orbit of Mercury around the sun, because it would orbit, but then it would deviate slightly, and that would be counter to the predictions and to the theory of Isaac Newton. And so Einstein had an idea about that, but he couldn't figure it out, so he had to go get a math guy to help him. So Einstein's primary strength wasn't the math, it was the theories, the understanding, the insight, and then needed a math guy to help him figure it out. And now, before I go any further, let me deal with this God concept, okay? For me personally, I do believe there is an intelligent source of creation. But I look at it simply as an entity that is far beyond us, advanced to us, that created this that we call existence. I mean, if you take a petri dish and you create something in that petri dish that begins to grow and takes on life, what possibility is that which you have created able to comprehend your existence, okay, and your genesis? Not at all, okay. So it's I really think we should view the intelligence that created the situation in which we live as that. At least that's where I'm coming from. But it's not necessary for you to get what I'm sharing right now. All I'm sharing right now is that there are invisible principles out there that we are governed by in life, that if we would just recognize that they exist and that they are actually principles, that we can take more control of our destiny. We can realize that things are not just happening to us, but we are causing these things to happen. And as we begin to walk with our eyes open and recognize this, if you realize in life that what goes around comes around, that you reap what you sow, if you really realize that is just as real as gravity, we wouldn't be doing a lot of the things that we do. I realize that this particular chair right here is a solid, and I believe that. I don't even have to consider all the molecules that are just simply condensed tightly in such a way that I could just sit down and I'm not going to fall through. But that is a reality, and that is a reality I can easily believe because I can see it with my eyes. But what I'm suggesting is I can as well be holding a glass vase that's very precious to me. That was an heirloom passed down to my family, and I'm not going to just let it go because I realize that it's going to fall to the ground and shatter. Why? Because of this thing called gravity. I trust in that gravity exists so much that I will not tempt it by dropping this vase. And all I'm suggesting is the concept of what goes around comes around is just as real as gravity is. And when we really grasp the reality of that, there's all kinds of things we wouldn't do in life, recognizing that the concept is going to come back to either haunt us or to bless us, okay? And so the concept of sowing and reaping, what you eat is going to be produced in your life. Look at us, okay? However you treat other people is going to respond to you. Look at today in the politics, how we're responding to immigrants, that we don't think belong here. What goes around comes around. Even politics, you'll see certain people in politics that maybe voted for a certain individual because they thought they were safe, but other people were not going to be safe, and then they ended up being challenged. What goes around comes around. Whether it's your children or whether it's your spouse, whether it's your job, how you respond in your job, what's the reward that you get put into education, everything in life is reaping what you've sown. And if we believed it to the extent that we believe in gravity, we wouldn't be doing half the stuff that we do today. And so the religion, I believe, has been critical to our failure, because most of us have been raised and somehow related to religion, and the old adage that familiarity breeds contempt. We really don't take it that serious. Now, if we're in a discussion, do you believe in God? Yeah, I do. All this kind of stuff. Man, look, when I was an atheist for those 10 years, when I went into the military at 17. I mean, I was doing all kinds of things that I shouldn't have been doing. I was drinking and getting the buzz and running around, with people, married women and single women. I was doing all the stuff I shouldn't have been doing because I didn't think there was any rules, But the funny thing was, the people that were doing these things with me, they believed in God. And I would be asking, if you believed in God, why are you even doing this here with me? Well, they didn't want to talk about it anymore. But what I'm talking about is familiarity breeds contempt. And so we can be embracing the religion and the belief because deep inside, this is what mama, grandmama, they believed how I was raised. But in reality, we're not living lives cognizant of the fact that the issues that we're experiencing are a result of our ignoring some of the principles, in that religion, okay? And so we have to come to a point, because we understand, I think deep inside, we understand that the religions are problematic. But they're so ingrained in us, we can't really consciously reject them. But subconsciously, we have rejected them because we are not living up to the standard of that those religions were projecting. Okay? And I'm saying is until we come to the point then where we separate, where we differentiate between the spirituality that we are simply as human beings and the religions that our ancestors grasped hold of because they couldn't understand or make sense of the things that they were experiencing, we're going to be continuing to flounder and not really find real success and happiness, contentment in our lives. It's really amazing to me. And if we really look carefully, into the scriptures, we'll recognize that these men, like I was sharing with Einstein, his theoretical stuff, he would daydream and just think deep thoughts. I believe that's what we have many of the prophets and the prophetic writings in Scripture are men that were really doing the same thing, but not the scientists, from Munich, not on that level of Einstein and Bohr and Tesla and all those other guys, but simply, contemplating. And that intelligence, it was the genesis of our creation, gave us the ability to comprehend things outside of our reality. It's simply in meditation and receiving, and maybe special people, I wouldn't know. But you can look at Scripture and see even the similarity between some of the physics and the quantum physics and the religious writings, where some of the where you see when we're praying, on earth as it is in heaven, okay, and then we see the entanglement where things that are here are the same as something that is over there, even if it's on the other side of the world or even on the other side of the universe. We see the time-space issue, and we see that all throughout the religion. That the traveling in time back and forth, and we see that possibility even in the quantum physics realm. Uncertainty, you really can't tell anything what is or what isn't, until you see it, right? And these are like encouragements for faith. Walk by faith, not by sight. Okay, just knowing that it's happening even if you don't see it. I mean, these are all physics principles that are in Scripture. So I'm saying that just like Einstein was a guy that daydreamed and came up with these problems and beliefs in his mind, they were like the prophets as well. Came up with these deep thoughts and deep understandings, and we need to see the similarity in that. So not validating the religions, because I believe that in all religious books you are going to find some truths in there, and you're going to find some lines that are crossed that are very, very similar. Because the religion was necessary at the time for the type people that were there, for them to have some kind of understanding or some kind of comfort in what they were being given to believe, because they couldn't possibly understand or comprehend what was going on out there. That has come incrementally to us, and there are even today things we still don't understand. But we're still holding on to the religions. Now I'm almost afraid to make this statement, because I think some of us need religion in order for us not to go buck wild. Yeah. I mean, maybe we can't handle it. Maybe we need to be strapped in that baby seat, so we don't get loose and bump our heads. But I think that in order for us to progress to the future, and I think in order for us as individuals, for our lives to actually be well, we have to recognize the difference between the religion and spirituality, the difference between religion and reality. But as well, the scientists need to recognize the spiritual nature of everything that they see or everything that they don't see, everything that they believe exists that is having an effect, but they can't pinpoint why it's happening. It's all the same stuff. It's all spirituality. We're all on the same page, but we've divided ourselves with these barriers of religion and the barriers of science. It's all the same. And we have to come to the place to believe that. And this is where we build upon. And when we shed ourselves of the religion, but we embrace the spirituality. And see, I'm not rejecting the religion in a way so that we could live any kind of way we want. Okay? I am simply saying that we need to understand the concepts that we've been given, especially the concept of what goes around comes around, because everything in life, it hinges upon that, just like everything in life hinges upon gravity. Everything. The functioning of your internal organs, you walking and standing and walking on this planet, everything in life is influenced by gravity. And what I'm saying is just as important, everything in life is influenced by what goes around comes around. Everything. Whether it's your health, whether it's your relationships, whether it's your finances, whether it's your nation or the world, the chaos, every bit of chaos that we see in the world is due to this concept of reaping what you've sown. Everything. and it's important for us to recognize this. This is as real as gravity, and it has affected us as traumatic as gravity. Without gravity, we wouldn't exist. Without the concept of reaping, sowing and reaping, we wouldn't exist either. And I'm just suggesting that once we get a hold of these principles as not being religious, but as simply being real, and so this is for secular people. Because often, I remember when I was an atheist, I had this feeling that my mantra for life was that I could do anything I wanted to do as long as it wasn't harming someone else. That was from an atheist perspective. That was from a secular perspective. But you know what? Most of what I was doing was affecting someone else, was hurting someone else. But in my mind, I wasn't personally doing something that was intentionally, that was hurting someone. And I'm saying government's the same, as wonderful as our nation is. You know, the wars that we have, the conflicts that we've had, I could name them off, you know, as well as the responses we have to poor people or the immigrants and all this. But even into nations and the strategies that we actually make ourselves a part of to make our countries great. I'm saying all nations, there are people that are harmed in the process to keep our countries, what we believe is, in the best place possible. But there's always reaping from what we've sown. And if I want to leave us with this one message for this particular program, is that reaping what you've sown is just as real as gravity. The only thing is, we have had so much input, science classes all throughout school, all about gravity, which we can't see, but we believe because we see the result. Well, we haven't had this teaching on reaping what we've sown. What goes around comes around. Chickens coming home to roost karma. It is so real. And I'm telling you this, that every lack in your life, every failure in your life, every aspect of your life that hasn't panned out, is a result of reaping what you've sown. For real. And so even when we look at the current situation in our nation, where I think the prevailing attitude among poor people, regardless of politics, now that we see issues with prices and things and losing our jobs and things of that nature, that we begin to recognize that it's solely the result of reaping what we've sown. How we respond to other people. This nation has responded to people, non-white people, historically since our inception. There is reaping in that. You can't get over it. You know, a father that doesn't know how to respond to his children, there will be reaping. And his inability to respond to his children may be the reaping from his father, who may be the reaping from his father. I'm telling you, our reaping has overreaching effect generationally. So the title of this particular program is, What If Reality Has Always Been Responding to You, Not Happening to You? So the point of this program is that reality has not been happening to you. Reality has been responding to you. And once you get a grasp of that, you can take control of your life, inventory your life. Who have you not been right to? Who have you done wrong to? When you go to a restaurant, do you tip well? I mean, simple things like that. See, one thing the preachers, I have to give them credit for, even though their intention may be dubious at times, is the concept of sowing and reaping as it applies to your money. It applies to everything. So if you're giving money for a good cause, you'll be reaping that money back. It has everything. If you're going outside in the middle of winter with no shoes or socks on, having just stepped out of a bucket of water, you're going to reap catching a cold. Everything is attached to this concept. And that's what I want to leave you with today. And I've gotten kind of excited about it because this is the first program of like 50 programs. that we're going to be airing this year. And the reality is they haven't been completed yet. They haven't been, the programs aren't there yet. But they're going to be. Because we have to shake our way out of this. The religions are what's keeping us down, which keeps us separate. Even when you're in a particular religion that you believe you know is the truth, you know, and everybody else going to hell, you know, you're reaping because of your response to other folks. Man, and I'm using, you can even use religious scripture that doesn't seem to be perverted, that seems to be out there, that makes sense. But to date this program though, I was watching a guy on social media talk about Bad Bunny, the guy that's supposed to be performing at the halftime show in a few months, and he was talking about how Bad Bunny was going to be going to hell, you know, and he had some other folks chiming in, amen. and see, I really know the scriptures because I really studied. And the reality is that and these are white folks, white Christians. When you understand the privilege that white people have lived in this country, and the blood, sweat, and tears of the people who have suffered. I mean, come on. When you look at these farmers that are really complaining because of the issues, you know, in our nation, and they have like 100 acres or 300 acres or whatever. How did they get those 100 or 300 acres? It was given to them free of charge. While people of color were not able to cash in on that same benefit. Don't you think there's some reaping that's going to come of that as well? And see, that's why even in the scriptures, we give it to and it's the same concept. I'm just saying this universal concept of sowing and reaping is like gravity. You're being encouraged not to retaliate evil for evil. Because the reality is, even if you're responding in vengeance or whatever, then you are going to be reaping that back, even if you were unfairly done, that created this momentum of you responding harshly to the individuals who victimized you. See, sowing and reaping isn't emotional. Sowing, just like gravity isn't emotional. You know, if I throw you a ball to make a basket and you make that basket, gravity was a good thing and it worked for us. But if you're working on the roof and you stumble and slip and fall off the roof, gravity is going to be working against you. Gravity doesn't have favorites. Gravity doesn't have emotions. Gravity doesn't punish. And gravity doesn't reward. And it's the same with sowing and reaping. It doesn't punish. It isn't a reward. It simply is a concept that functions. Okay? And so I'm just suggesting that we need to realize that every aspect of our life. So I can guarantee you, without knowing you and knowing your life. I mean, if you're telling me you're not able to afford the life today because you don't make enough money, and it's just not fair that billionaires and millionaires are making so much, then the response is, what did you do in your younger days that didn't create the avenue for you to have enough money to support yourself and to be comfortable? You're reaping right now. We're all reaping. I recognize that. Come on now. I have a pretty good job as a mailman the past 32 years, make good money, have a good life, good home, good family, and education, MBA, all this stuff going on. Children, one graduated from college, one is in college, good stuff. But I do know that if I hadn't made some of the decisions I made younger, I would be in a far better place than I am right now. I know this. So I can't complain because I recognize the concept of sowing and reaping. Who would I be complaining to? When I was at NCR, I'll close with this because now it's kind of funny, but it's true, and I want you to recognize how this happens in every aspect of life. I was with NCR for 13 years. 3-piece suit, you know, briefcase, trench coat, back in those days, right? And I had been there 13 years. AT&T took over back in '94, and many of us lost our jobs. I took a slight buyout, signing a little document that I'd never sue them. I got some more. I had money and I was able to survive. But the reality is this, there were people walking through, there are people even today that are bitter at NCR because they lost their jobs. I'm not. Look. When I was there, okay, this is business, this is corporate environment. They were paying for education. So they would pay for my education as long as it was related to business. And so I started going to college when I was at NCR. You know, you'd pay up front, then you'd give them the vouchers and they'd reimburse you the money. But then I ended up stopping. I said, why am I doing this when I'm already working here? Little did I know, years later, I was going to lose my job. And once I lost my job, I wasn't even marketable because I was in a job that required a degree. So after I left NCR, I'm putting in, Reynolds and Reynolds and all these other companies. This was a long time ago, 94. But I wasn't getting any callbacks. I was trying to get a job in the same job that I was doing for 13 years. But the problem was they hired me into a degreed position. And so once that job was gone, I wasn't able to get the same type job with another company because I wasn't qualified. Okay? And so my reality then is, I quit going to college and NCR was paying it for free. I simply reaped what I had sown. How can I be mad? Now I have an associate degree, bachelor's degree, and an MBA, which I had to pay for out of my own pocket later on in life. Why? Why did I have to come up with all that money later on in life? Because I reaped what I had sown. Every aspect of life, man. Your health, your finances, your family situation, your job situation, everything in life as an individual, but as well as a community, as a county, as a state, as a nation, as a world. We're all reaping what we sowed. Now the positive about all this is that although your entire nation may be suffering, your entire community may be suffering, your entire state may be suffering, but in your particular bubble of existence, if you grab a hold of this concept of sowing and reaping and begin doing everything you can positively, you'll be buffered in a negative situation and you will be okay. But the politicians and the religious folks, they're very convincing. And when you side with politicians and you're ragging against these kind of people or hating these kind of people or the religion and everybody's going to hell but you and those people are evil because they don't worship the same God, all that stuff, man, you are sowing and you are reaping, and that's why your life in so many ways is jacked up. It's time, man. It's time to recognize this. Put the religion aside. Recognize your spirituality. And recognize what you may call God, you may call Allah, you may call Krishna. But even those names present a separation of the other groups. Just recognize that there is that source of creation which you emanate from. Whatever it is, we can't possibly know. And then your fellow human beings, just do them right in every way. You know, even the religions are telling you how to treat the immigrant, how to treat the immigrant, how to treat the stranger, how to treat the poor and the widowed and the suffering. And I was in prison, did you visit me? You know, I was infirmed, did you visit me? All this stuff, what you do to the least you do to me. These are what we have in our religious writings, but it seems like, you know, political, embracing the politics and embracing the religion itself, we lose sight of the fact that anything we do to anybody else, especially those who are least from us, who would be more affected by our antics, we're doing to that source of our creation. What it's telling you right here is you're going to reap what you're sowing. I can tell those guys, you're talking about Bad Bunny. I mean, shoot, man, you're a white guy in America. You think you don't have any reaping coming? And then the fact that you're even talking about him in such a way because he's a Spanish-speaking person and he's not whatever you are, whatever you think the center in this nation is, you're in for a whole lot of reaping, man. We all are if we don't recognize that sowing and reaping is just as real as gravity. And if you think you can just run real fast and just jump up in the air and fall on your back and be okay, that's really in essence what you're doing with the invisible concept of sowing and reaping. You're just doing what you want to do, as detrimental as it might be to you, and you are suffering the consequences. Your life is an example of the suffering of the consequences. Thing is, you just don't realize it. And then it's so easy, well, they're coming to take my jobs. It's so easy to come up with excuses, point fingers. Well, that big company, those billionaires, they're getting tax cuts, they're doing it. It's so easy to point at everybody else. And not, because it helps not to have to recognize and realize the accountability that you have in your own life for your own failure. I look at this, we're really going to close. I look at, when you have like child pedophiles that end up going to prison, and then they end up getting really mistreated in prison, and some of them are being killed. Because even in prison, there's a standard, that's just off limits to kids. But the reality is, everybody sitting in prison is there because society is determined that because of their actions, they can't be permitted to be among civilized people. So they're there because they're reaping what they've sown. But so what alleviates some of the reality and the guilt of their reality from the actions they took? Finding someone else that they can deem as worse than them. And that's what the pedophile is. The pedophile is no different than the guy that stole, or the guy that killed, or the guy that murdered. Society is determined that we don't need them in society. But this guy, now that's incarcerated, is going to determine this guy is worse than him, because psychologically he needs that to take his mind off of his own accountability for why he's been removed from society himself. And this is really where we're all at. Now, most of us are not making such heinous choices that are causing ourselves to be incarcerated. But what I'm suggesting is the choices that most of us are making are choices because of this concept of sowing and reaping that's totally detrimental to the progress and to the success and to the happiness and to the lack of chaos in our lives. But it can be well. Just realize this. And just start working toward being a better person. But it's going to take some real critical self-examination. Don't justify your answer. Well, I'm this way because they're that way. Don't do that, because that is no excuse. Because sowing and reaping has no reward, has no punishment, has no favorites. Somebody doing something, it's not your justification to be that way, because both of you are in for some reaping. Now, my philosophy is, for myself, look, we're kind of jacked up human beings anyway, and there's no way we're going to do everything right? So to offset the negatives, just try to do as much as you can. That's right, okay? And they'll offset the stuff, the negative stuff that comes quite natural to you. But really, we are self-sabotaging often in many ways. And I want to go back to the not eating healthy, or not exercising, or not going to our jobs, or getting our further education, all the things that we're not doing that are detriments to ourselves. And what I'm suggesting is that the worst reaping are the things, the negativities that we perpetrate on other human beings. In other words, it's bad when we do it to ourselves, but it's going to be worse when we do it to other human beings. Okay, just chew on that. And I think this is, again, the first program of a series. I think I'm going to be doing this series for a year, and we're going to see if we can come to a place of wellness from all this. All right. Well, anyway, I do want to thank you once again for joining me for another perspective, and I want to invite you to join me again. You take care.